Imagine finding out that um, almost half of all the career moves people make aren't actually promotions. Like they are lateral moves or literal steps backward.
Yeah, it's a pretty harsh reality check for a lot of people.
Welcome to the deep dive. If your career path lately feels less like a ladder and more like a chaotic zigzag, maybe a few sideways shuffles or a demotion you had to take just to keep things together, you are exactly who we are talking to today. We're going to completely dismantle the outdated myth of the career ladder.
Right, because that ladder is pretty much gone.
Exactly. And we're going to look at the actual reality of what we call career navigation in today's incredibly chaotic labor market.
The shift we are living through right now is, frankly, profound. We are looking closely at a really fascinating research paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's called Navigating Careers Without Clear Pathways.
It's a great paper.
It really is. The research digs deep into the structural realities that workers and students are actually facing, looking way past the usual advice to, just work harder, and it examines the actual friction in the labor market.
Because this deep dive is going to validate that zigzag feeling you might have. We're going to look at the data showing how systemic constraints, like things completely outside your control, not just your individual grit or your work ethic, are actually shaping who gets to move up and who gets stuck. Okay, let's unpack this.
We really have to start by defining the new reality of work by looking at what we've lost, right? For decades, the entire cultural narrative around employment was based on this idea of the career ladder.
The classic post-war industrial model.
Exactly. It taught us that you get an entry-level job at a stable organization, you put in your time, and you predictably step up to the next rung. The company provided the structure for you.
But that structure it's largely evaporated today.
Completely. What has replaced the ladder is the career pivot.
And the numbers detailing these pivots are just staggering. In the research focus groups, when people mapped out their actual career journeys, 46% of their transitions were lateral or backward movements.
Wait, nearly half?
Yeah, nearly half. Not advancements. Only one single participant in the entire study described a strictly linear, straight-up trajectory. We are talking about a workforce that is basically constantly resetting.
Wow. And when you look at the mechanics of why people are constantly resetting, a massive factor is economic shocks. Take the COVID-19 pandemic, for example.
Right, that changed everything.
It didn't just pause careers, it entirely wiped out specific tiers of low-wage, high-contact jobs. It forced millions of people to completely abandon their previous plans and, start over in entirely new industries.
Or look at industry restructuring and labor disputes. The paper mentioned one worker in the study who had to leave the entertainment industry entirely.
Oh, right, the writers' strike.
Yeah, they had to go back to community college after a strike essentially eliminated all the entry-level opportunities in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The ground is just constantly shifting underneath them.
But it's not just the broader economy doing this either. It is the education system itself creating massive friction. The paper points out that nearly 40% of students at public two-year colleges leave without a credential.
40%. That's incredibly high.
It is, and that usually isn't because the classes are too hard. It's often because of a completely broken credit transfer system.
Oh, I've heard about this, where confusing degree audits and bureaucratic mazes force students to take classes they don't even need.
Exactly. It drains their financial aid, and ultimately they just drop out. The systemic hurdles are even more visible when you look at immigration, too.
Yeah, the stat on that blew my mind.
There are over 2 million college-educated immigrants in the U.S. who are unemployed or underemployed right now.
Over 2 million. Because of credential translation, right.
Yes, largely because of that bureaucracy. Domestic licensing boards and employers frequently refuse to recognize international degrees. So you end up with highly trained engineers working in warehouses.
Or thoracic surgeons driving rideshare vehicles.
Yeah.
It is a massive structural loss of human capital, where
Yeah.
people with deep expertise are forced back to square one. They have to make a major unscripted pivot just to survive.
It makes me think about how careers used to be pitched to us as an escalator. You just get on, hold the handrail, and ride to the top. But now it feels like careers are a massive, unmapped escape room, and the rules just keep changing while you are inside.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy perfectly captures the systemic failure we are dealing with. Our entire education and workforce infrastructure is still stubbornly designed for the escalator.
It expects that linear path.
Right. High schools, colleges, and corporate training programs assume a linear progression. They assume A leads to B.
Yeah.
So when the escalator inevitably breaks down, the system just doesn't have the mechanisms to help you reroute. It leaves workers entirely on their own to figure out the escape room. But when you are trapped in an escape room, the first thing you do is look for a map. And we generally assume the internet is that map, right? But I have to push back a little on the idea that people are lost today. Isn't the internet supposed to democratize this information?
You would think so, yeah.
Like, we have millions of job postings online,
Yeah.
forums, company reviews. It seems counterintuitive that people would be less informed when they have more data at their fingertips than ever before.
I get that, but it is a classic paradox of information abundance without clarity. The data is everywhere, sure, but the reliability of that data is plummeting.
How bad is it?
The survey showed 1 in 5 workers rely on online tools as their main source of career info, but trust in those platforms is incredibly low. Without a trusted intermediary to translate the landscape, all that data just becomes noise.
That reminds me, I read this quote from a community college student in the study, and it was so relatable. He said he completely abandoned platforms like Indeed and LinkedIn because he felt it was just, quote, a bunch of ghost jobs and scams.
Yeah, and career coaches in the study validated that exact fear. Ghost jobs are a very real phenomenon.
Where companies keep job postings active even when they aren't hiring.
Exactly. They have absolutely no intention of hiring. They do it to look like they're growing to investors or to placate an overworked staff by making it seem like help is on the way, or simply to hoard resumes for the future.
So for the job seeker, it creates this terrifying illusion of opportunity that doesn't actually exist.
It's an illusion compounded by the technology itself, too. You look at a real job posting, and it often features an algorithmic salary range that makes zero sense.
Oh, I've seen those. They are wildly inaccurate sometimes.
The automated salary estimates are highly destructive. Job platforms scrape data from across the web to guess what a job pays, but those algorithms often fail to factor in local cost of living or specific job duties.
So a job seeker looks at this algorithmically generated number and either drastically undervalues their own labor.
Or they chase a phantom six-figure payout that the employer was never going to offer. Add in the dense technical jargon that employers use, which totally shuts out people who don't already have industry insider knowledge, and the digital map becomes completely unreadable.
So information abundance actually exacerbates inequality if you don't know how to interpret it.
Exactly. And because the real information is so murky, people naturally fill the gaps with whatever they can find. The paper talks about how media heavily distorts reality here.
Right, like people choosing medical careers based on watching the drama of Grey's Anatomy.
Or they log on to TikTok and see influencers promising these lavish, six-figure salaries in tech, no degree required.
The result has to be a massive disconnect between expectation and reality.
It is. Over 70% of community college students report they are highly confident in their understanding of their ideal career.
But let me guess, they don't actually know the details.
Right. Fewer than half of them can actually name a specific employer in that field. They are anchoring to an aesthetic they saw on social media or a promised salary range rather than engaging with the actual labor market.
And the level of clarity varies wildly by industry, doesn't it? The study contrasted healthcare with cybersecurity.
Yeah, that was a great comparison. In healthcare, the path is visible and standardized. If you want to be a nurse, you get the credential, you do the clinicals, you go to the hospital.
But a student studying cybersecurity essentially said you have to be totally on your own. It's a fragmented mess of private certifications and opaque entry points.
And the newest complication in this opaque landscape is generative AI. We might assume AI could act as the ultimate map to help navigate this, but the research points to a very different current reality.
Oh, you mean the hallucinating cover letters?
Yes. The research noted a specific anecdote from a career coach where a client used ChatGPT to write a cover letter, and the AI confidently hallucinated entirely false work experience on the applicant's behalf.
That is wild.
We are seeing the rise of a hack culture where people use AI to spam hundreds of resumes to bypass applicant tracking systems. But for job seekers who lack deep digital literacy, they might not catch those AI hallucinations.
So they submit a resume with fake credentials, get blacklisted by the employer, and actively harm their own mobility.
Exactly.
When you realize the online map is broken, feeding you ghost jobs and AI hallucinations, human nature dictates you put down your phone and turn to the people physically closest to you for directions. which leads us to the double-edged sword of social networks.
Right. When institutional information fails, we instinctively rely on our social capital. For 31% of workers and 32% of students, family and friends are their absolute top source of career information.
At first glance, that sounds great, like your friends and family have your back. But the research outlines a concept called occupational clustering, which is driven by these strong ties.
There's an incredible example in the text about that. A career coach noticed an entire community of people all training to be certified nursing assistants.
Not because they individually assessed the local labor market and found a nursing shortage, right?
No, simply, quote, because that's what everybody else is doing. Close friends and family make up your strong ties. They provide essential emotional validation, and they can offer immediate, tangible examples of how to get a specific job.
But the danger is that our social networks in society are highly stratified by income and occupation.
Exactly. People share the same limited pool of information in an echo chamber. So strong ties usually just replicate the status quo. If your immediate network works in low-wage retail or warehouse sectors, relying solely on them will likely keep you clustered in those exact same industries.
So strong ties act like an anchor. They are amazing for keeping you safe and grounded in a storm, but they are terrible if you actually want to pull up the anchor and sail to a completely new destination. To do that, you need weak ties.
What's fascinating here is that decades of labor economics, dating back to Mark Granovetter's foundational theories, prove this dynamic. Weak ties the acquaintances outside your close personal circle, like a friend of a friend or a former manager, are absolutely essential for upward mobility.
Because they sit in different information networks.
Right. They provide cross-sector exposure and introduce you to norms and opportunities in entirely different industries. But the data shows that low-wage workers severely lack these weak ties because they are systemically isolated from the spaces where those networks form.
And even a single connection outside that immediate circle can change a life. The transformative power of mentorship was highlighted through some deeply emotional stories in the interviews.
Yeah, those stories were powerful.
Like the young man who explicitly stated his entire trajectory in engineering was saved because one single professor took an interest in him.
Or the woman who described her early career as a chaotic zigzag through dead-end retail jobs until one afternoon her pastor suggested she try nursing. She enrolled in community college that exact same day.
The speed of that action demonstrates the sheer power of trusted guidance.
It really does. Networking interventions by schools or workforce programs often fail because they just throw people in a mixer and tell them to hand out business cards. Mentorship operates on a completely different level. It provides personalized accountability and the psychological safety to try something new.
So if we want to impact economic mobility, institutional programs have to prioritize the depth and quality of relationships over the sheer quantity of, LinkedIn connections.
Absolutely.
But let's assume you manage to find a great mentor and you somehow decipher the broken internet map. You still can't navigate the escape room if the room is actively filling with water.
That's a grim image, but accurate.
This points toward what we could call the Maslow's hierarchy of job quality. The research makes it clear that poor job quality actually destroys the cognitive capacity a person needs to plan a career.
It functions as a fundamental threshold condition. You cannot strategize about a 5-year career plan when your brain is entirely consumed by the stress of day-to-day survival. Naturally, that starts with wages.
But the workers in the study were very clear that it isn't just about wages. One worker made an incredibly pragmatic point, saying, "Not all money is good money."
Meaning, yes, compensation is the baseline you must hit, but once you reach that survival threshold, the presence of respect and dignity in the workplace matters just as much as the paycheck.
Without respect and predictability, the pure logistics of just holding the job consume all your energy. The researchers painted vivid pictures of these logistical nightmares.
Like the home care worker in Boston.
Yes, she had to actively turn down clients. She was literally turning away income because the public transit infrastructure was too unreliable for her to reach them on time. The broken transit system was actively destroying her earning potential.
Then there's the nightmare of chaotic schedules. Workers talked about having to wait days just to receive their shifts from management. Companies use just-in-time scheduling algorithms to minimize their labor costs, but they do it by transferring all the volatility onto the worker.
You can't sign up for a Tuesday night class to upskill if you have no idea whether the algorithm will force you to work a Tuesday night shift next week.
Exactly.
My heart broke reading about the 26-year-old father in one of the focus groups. He was sitting there with his 2-year-old daughter fidgeting in his lap, trying to explain how he desperately balances unpredictable night shifts, active parenting, and his college classes.
The lack of logistical stability is compounded by a profound lack of psychological safety, too. The researchers highlighted the example of the 24-year-old student who explicitly said he wouldn't step out of his comfort zone or take risks to learn new skills unless he felt he had his manager's trust.
When you constantly fear being fired for a simple mistake, you just stop learning.
And it gets darker when the environment is actively hostile. The text discusses a 48-year-old black woman who was essentially forced out of her job in public education because the compounding microaggressions became too much to bear.
She had to choose between advancing her career and preserving her mental well-being. It sounds like traditional corporate environments aren't just unhelpful, they are actively repelling these workers.
That dynamic is causing a massive demographic shift in who is starting businesses. We are seeing entrepreneurship spike dramatically, particularly among younger people and those without degrees.
Oh wait, does this intense feeling of being trapped by bad schedules and toxic environments explain why the source notes entrepreneurship is suddenly spiking?
Yes, precisely. The data in the text notes that the average age of new entrepreneurs has dropped to under 34. For many of these workers, starting their own business isn't about trying to build the next massive Silicon Valley tech startup.
It's a rational attempt to bypass traditional, hostile corporate hierarchies.
They might just be buying a power washing van or starting a local baking business, but it allows them to finally gain flexibility, control over their schedule, and escape the toxic environments holding them back.
Yeah. If the system is rigged, you build your own system. But navigating out of a toxic job or starting your own business takes a highly specific set of skills, which points to the final institutional failure detailed in the paper, the absolute crisis in how we teach, or rather don't teach people, how to navigate this mess.
We really have to differentiate between two distinct types of skills that workers need today. First, there are durable skills, which are your foundational interpersonal and communication abilities.
Like the front desk worker in the study who talked about learning to code switch depending on the customer she was talking to, adapting her communication style because she was the first face of the company.
That is a classic durable skill. But then there are navigation skills. These are highly specific mechanisms for survival in a complex system. The ability to self-advocate, how to use SMART goals to map out a pivot, how to make career decisions under high uncertainty, and how to bounce back from structural bureaucratic setbacks.
The crazy part is that these vital navigation skills are almost never formally taught in a classroom. The research shows people are learning them through incredibly costly trial and error.
Right. You fill out a form wrong, you mess up a semester of financial aid, you lose thousands of dollars, and that is how you learn self-advocacy. It's an incredibly punishing way to learn.
The burden falls on the individual because the institutional infrastructure meant to support them is completely overwhelmed. The text exposes a massive hidden crisis in career coaching.
It's pretty shocking.
Listen to this. #1 single community college career coach reported being responsible for 4,700 students.
It is an impossible scale. Even if that coach worked every day of the year, a student would be lucky to get 5 minutes of their time. And on top of that staggering ratio, these coaches are effectively forced to act as social workers.
Because they can't just sit down and critique your resume.
No. They are spending their limited time connecting clients to housing assistance, SNP benefits, and childcare. As one coach in the study noted, everything in their life impacts their ability to get a job. You cannot focus on interview prep if a student is facing eviction.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Employers are constantly complaining to the media that modern workers lack soft skills or professional readiness. But based on this research, isn't that actually a massive institutional failure rather than an individual worker's fault?
This raises an important question. Why don't we treat career navigation as a core foundational competency? We mandate that students learn math and reading, but we completely ignore the specific skills required to survive in a fragmented, chaotic labor market.
Institutions just treat career navigation as an afterthought, maybe an optional workshop you can attend if you have free time, which, as the scheduling data showed us, these workers absolutely do not have.
Exactly.
So we have broken down the death of the ladder, the broken internet maps, the limits of relying on strong ties, the crushing weight of bad job quality, and the lack of coaches. The escape room is real, but how do we actually fix it?
The research emphasizes that isolated, piecemeal fixes won't work. We need systemic alignment. We need curated information systems like the Labor Market Intelligence Center at Dallas Community College that actually translate labor data and filter out the noise for students.
We need programs explicitly designed to build cross-income weak tie networks, so workers aren't trapped in occupational clusters.
Yes. And furthermore, we have to embed career navigation directly into school curricula so it reaches everyone, not just the students privileged enough to have free time.
And we need employers to offer stable jobs with predictable schedules so people actually have the cognitive space and time to plan their next move.
Finally, we must invest heavily in professionalized, well-funded coaching intermediaries. The paper highlights organizations like Jewish Vocational Services and Next Gen Talent.
Because they have deep community roots.
Right, and they provide the wraparound support handling the housing crises and the childcare connections that traditional colleges are simply not equipped to deliver. They clear the logistical hurdles so the student can actually focus on their career.
Think about your own career pivots for a second. Who were your weak ties that helped you jump to a new industry? Did you have an institutional map to guide you? Or were you just wandering that escape room in the dark, bumping into the walls until you finally found a door?
As you reflect on your own path, I want to leave you with a final thought, building on the profound anxiety around automation and generative AI that the source material touches on. As AI continues to disrupt entire industries, and as the hard technical skills you learn today become obsolete faster than ever before, what if your career navigation capacity, your sheer ability to pivot, to unlearn old systems and relearn new ones on the fly, then becomes the single most valuable asset you can possibly have on your resume?
So what does this all mean? It means that if you've been feeling lost, or if your career feels like a chaotic zigzag rather than a smooth ride up the escalator, you need to take a deep breath. It is not a personal failing. It is the design flaw in the system. The ladder is gone. The escape room is real. But with the right map, the right weak ties, and the ability to pivot, you can still find your way out.